Okay, thank you so much for joining us this morning. I'm Janine Perry. I'm with the Political Science Department. I'm the director of the Arkansas Poll, and I have been since its inception in 1999. Todd Shields, my colleague in political science and the director of the Diane D. Blair Center of Southern Politics and Society, which supports the poll, and also Bill Schreckheis, my polling partner, could not be here today. But I am joined by a brand new colleague in the Department of Political Science, Dr. Pearl Ford, who collaborated with us this year on some very exciting questions pertaining to the presidential election specifically. So we'll be hearing more from her shortly. Just by way of background, the Arkansas Poll is this state's only regular source of public opinion data and has been now for 10 years. Over the last decade, we've visited with 8,500 Arkansans for around 20 minutes each, asking between 60 and 70 questions each time. It's an enormous undertaking, as you might guess, but one we believe serves citizens, public officials, and the media well. Before we cut to the chase, I would be remiss if I did not note that the heavy lifting of a project like this, the heavy lifting of discussing the issues that contribute so much to our collective understanding of public life, falls really to two groups of people. One is Dr. Molly Longstreth and the staff at the University of Arkansas's Survey Research Center over in Hotz Hall on campus. These folks, paid part-time employees, many of them students at the university, dial thousands of numbers. They've dialed thousands of numbers to gather the data that we're about to present. Second, of course, are the respondents themselves. Now, this is a very special year for the Arkansas Poll. To celebrate our 10-year anniversary, we more than doubled the size of our normal statewide sample of 750 people to collect more than 1,600 responses, with at least 400 in each of the state's 4 congressional districts. Now, the obvious advantage of this is that we can examine the poll's findings for each of those districts and have a satisfactory margin of error. But it also allows us to slice the data more finely than we have been able to in the past without our margin of error ballooning out of control. Now, certainly we're available, Pearl and I and other folks throughout the day, to discuss whatever individual reporters, individual citizens, individual policymakers, whatever, find interesting. And I'm always ready to talk about the Arkansas Poll, so today or any day. And while the summer report, as well as all of the questions, are available on our website, as noted in the news release, I thought I'd just hit some highlights. I'm going to turn it over to Dr. Ford. And she's going to focus on some presidential highlights, some race and politics issues, and then we thought we'd open it up for question and answer. First of all, Arkansans overwhelmingly view the economy as the most important problem or issue facing the state. Fully 56%, given a list of the top 6 items mentioned by respondents last year, selected the economy as the top problem. That's the highest ranking we've seen for any topic in any year by an enormous margin. This year, healthcare and education trailed far behind as the second and third options, with 15% and 10% respectively. Now, I think it's pretty clear from these results that the public figure taking the hardest hit in this environment is President Bush, whose approval rating has fallen in Arkansas to a record low of 27%. So Arkansas is tracking his national rankings, of course. But this is happening in a state that voted for him twice, right, by 5 percentage points in 2000. We almost doubled that in 2004, and yet his approval ratings are down below 30% in Arkansas. Now, Arkansas's own public figure, perhaps ironically, are in remarkably good shape. Most notable is the fact that Governor Beebe has now set a record high for state officials on our poll in the tracking that we've done for 10 years, with 3/4 of respondents giving Governor Beebe a satisfactory approval rating. We approve of his performance. So I guess it turns out that Sarah Palin is not the most popular governor in the country. We tested only the 2 citizen-initiated and highest-profile ballot measures this year. There are actually 5 statewide ballot measures. We tested just the 2 that were citizen-initiated and, of course, have been the highest profile out there in the public and in the media. In the case of proposed Amendment 3, the lottery amendment, respondents were strongly supportive. Nearly 2/3 of our respondents plan to vote for the lottery amendment. The measure finds particularly strong support among the young. Democrats are more likely than independents and Republicans to support the measure, or rather they support it by wider margin. Even people identifying themselves, and I thought this was interesting, as evangelicals or born-again Christians support the measure, 53-45. So people attending church more than once a week are actually strongly opposed to the lottery, but weekly churchgoers and less frequent churchgoers are not. So I think we thought we would see some patterns here that in fact don't emerge. We see an Arkansas electorate that is strongly supportive of this education-related lottery measure, and we can talk more about that later. Now, and what to me was perhaps the most interesting finding this year, it appears that proposed initiated Act 1 to prohibit people in cohabitating relationships from adopting or fostering children does not have strong support in the Arkansas electorate. The measure was favored by 38% of our respondents and opposed by 55% of our respondents. That's 38-55. This opposition extends, if barely, to Christian evangelicals and all but the most frequent churchgoers. Women are significantly more likely to oppose the measure than men, as are Democrats and independents, more so than Republicans. So there's a party gap there. There's also a gender gap on Initiated Act 1, but overwhelmingly, again, Arkansans appear to be poised to vote against Initiated Act 1. And finally, while the partisan breakdown of our respondents remains, remarkably consistent from year to year, and this is something we've been talking about with reporters in this state and elsewhere for a long time, we see about 1/4 of the Arkansas electorate identifying themselves as Republicans, about 1/3 as Democrats, and about 1/3 as independents. But these proportions are not reflected in our likely presidential pick. Rather, John McCain maintains a solid lead over Barack Obama in Arkansas, 49% to 36%, but with 15% undecided or unwilling to say. And that proportion, 15%, I should add, is more than twice what we're seeing nationally. So there could still be some movement in the Arkansas electorate. Among the registered voters only in our sample, McCain's lead grows to 51-36. Now, since we're talking about presidential elections, I'd like to turn it over to my friend Professor Pearl Ford, and she's going to explore the presidential numbers further and also talk about the significance of race and politics in this election.
Good morning. This year, there were a series of political questions that were added to the poll in an attempt to understand the political climate of the state and to determine what factors may influence voter choice in such a historic election that has seen many firsts and the interjection of polarizing issues. Arkansas has become a great laboratory to study presidential politics. With President Clinton, Governor Mike Huckabee, and Senator Hillary Clinton, the national spotlight has turned to Arkansas. First, let's look at the Hillary Clinton dynamic. The data shows that although Senator Clinton did not win the Democratic nomination for president, her political roots within the state has played a significant role in voter choice. We asked, would you have voted for Hillary Clinton if she had been a nominee for president? 54% of respondents stated yes, while 41% stated no. If we look at the voter choice for McCain and Obama, as Dr. Perry mentioned, 49% state they would vote for McCain and 36% state they would vote for Obama. This is interesting in light of the fact that last year's poll presented data that informed us that the state may be leaning towards a Democratic candidate. Support for Clinton was consistent in all 4 congressional districts, with her strongest support in the 1st district. If we look at the issues, several issue questions that we asked, voters identified with Obama on several issues. We asked the question, do you think it is a good idea for a president to meet with leaders of countries that are considered enemies of the U.S.? 64% stated that this was a good idea, 5% was neutral, 26% felt it was a bad idea, 5% refused. So we see on issues like this, there is some commonality with Obama, however, the numbers are not going towards Obama. If we look at race and voting, issues of race and religion may play a significant role in voter choice in Arkansas as well. Our series of questions designed to understand respondents' attitudes towards race and African Americans were very revealing. We asked the question, what percentage of people you knew would not vote for a presidential candidate who was black? 34.2% of the respondents knew someone. In comparison with the National Pew survey, which was released on October 21st, 21% of those respondents personally knew of someone who would not vote for a black candidate. If we look at a more detailed breakdown of the state, 29.6% said they knew of no one who would not vote for African American, 18% said they did not know at all, and 1.2% refused. If we look at this district by district, we see in the 1st district, we had a total of 49.3% of persons who said they knew of someone who would not vote for African American presidential candidate. 31.6% said they knew of no one. 18.4% said they didn't know, and 0.7% refused. We see a consistent line of thinking if we look at District 2. 52.8% knew of someone. District 3, 50.2% knew of someone. And District 4, 53.8% knew of someone. We also see that the view of Obama as far as his religious beliefs may also play a role. Data reveals that a considerable amount of Arkansans believe that Obama is a Muslim or of another faith. 44% stated they felt he was Christian. 19.6% stated he was Muslim. 10.3% stated something else. And 25% said they did not know. National polling data continues to reveal a small but consistent amount of 12% of respondents that say Obama is Muslim. If we look at congressional districts, we saw the largest number of respondents that felt that Obama was Muslim was within the 1st district, and that was 24.6%. Now, this is interesting because we also asked questions that addressed political knowledge, and our sample was actually very knowledgeable. 58% of them stated that they felt that they were informed about politics, and questions about who was the Speaker of the House, questions about terms within the Senate and the court system, many of them answered the questions correctly. We also asked a series of questions that attempted to understand citizens' view on racial progress. Due to time, I won't cover each question, but the responses revealed a very conservative attitude towards racial advancement for African Americans. 46% of the sample disagreed that blacks have received less than they deserved in society, while 55% felt that blacks should overcome prejudices and work their way up like other ethnic minorities, such as Irish, Italians, and Jewish communities. We will continue to develop a detailed analysis to understand how these attitudes may influence vote choice, as well as the likelihood of African American candidates being successful in local and statewide elections.
Ahead and open this up for some question and answer. As you can tell, we have one mic, but we can do this with the folks who are here, and people are also, of course, can fax questions in and that kind of thing. There's obviously a ton of data here, and we may have already done the cross tabulations or what you wanted. We may not have, but we can certainly try to address your questions if there are some.
Did I hear right? 34% of Arkansans know somebody who will not vote for a black for president? Yes. Is that what I heard?
34% of Arkansans say they know someone. And you can guess why we asked the question the way that we did, right? There's a socially acceptable response. And so by putting it on other people, we felt like it was sort of a check on, do you know people? Now, people's perceptions may be inaccurate, but 34% of the sample said that they knew someone.
Yeah, for instance, it doesn't exclude themselves if they want to reply in that fashion.
Correct.
So, has anybody else done something like this? Do we have anything we can compare to other states?
As far as states or national, this is a question that has been asked nationwide.
I'm going to let Pearl address that further.
This is a question that has been asked nationally. The last report that we have of this question was the Pew National Survey, which came on the 21st. And in their response, they surveyed over 2,000 nationwide. 21% of their respondents claimed that they knew of someone. So this is a national question.
Okay. Was there any question about whether somebody was more likely to vote for somebody because he was a black candidate?
No.
Okay. Is there any, I'm sorry for the vague question, but was there any attempt to decide how much this is impacting this particular candidate in this particular race? Or?
Well, the reason we put the question in because we kind of had, at least I did, I won't speak for Dr. Perry, that there was an idea that there was something going on in Arkansas as far as why Obama was having some issues. I mean, of course, we know that he did not open a national office here. He hasn't visited the state, so of course, those factors play a role. But we wanted to also know, was there something else, particularly in light of what was occurring nationwide with the media as far as advertisements and negative campaigning? Were Arkansans being influenced by that as well?
Okay, and you saw
that
people
there
weren't
is,
arguing with his positions and they were inclined to vote for a Democrat, but it wasn't showing up in support.
it's not showing in the support. So there's something there. And so we're trying to figure out what is it.
You asked people whether or not what Obama's religion was, and a very interesting question. Do you think you got a pretty interesting answer? Were you surprised at it?
I was surprised at the number. Like I said, if we look at the national polls, that this question has been asked since the primaries. And there's been a consistent average of about 11 to 12.5% of respondents nationwide that have said that he was a Muslim. And so for our numbers to be a little higher, that is interesting, especially since we know we're dealing with a sample that does have a pretty decent to above average knowledge of politics. I mean, if we look at that in comparison to a question about who's the Speaker of the House, we had 64% who was able to identify Nancy Pelosi as the Speaker. And so we know that people are aware and they have access to information, but this number still remains a high number comparison to the nation.
So if the electorate is relatively well informed, where do you think that this idea comes from?
Well,
Could you repeat the question?
okay. His question was, if the sample is pretty well informed, where does this idea that Obama is a Muslim comes from? Well, we know from political science research that if attitudes are ingrained and that there are what we call modern racial attitudes towards other groups, and meaning that racial attitudes, racism that may not be overt but suppressed, persons may not be open to information. If they have made up their mind or a judgment about particular groups of people, particular people, they may not be open to accurate information. Oh, Dr. Perry wants to ask.
I was just going to add briefly. Sorry. Okay. Could share. Do you want to do that? Yeah. I was going to add here briefly that one of the other things I think that was a real puzzle about our Arkansan support and presidential choice and that kind of thing is that, and I think we mentioned this in the news release, that exit polls showed that John Kerry got 82% of the Democrat support in 2004. And in Arkansas. And so we talk about cultural disconnects with Democratic candidates and that kind of thing, but he still got 82% of the Democratic support in the end. Right now, Obama has something like only 2/3 of the support of the Democratic identifiers. Now, that doesn't all have to be, it can't all be explained, or it needn't all be explained by race. We also have a Hillary Clinton factor here, which is that a lot of folks, and we also saw a disproportionate percentage of Democrats who were still undecided. You don't see a lot of Republicans who are undecided in Arkansas. You do see a lot of Democrats who are undecided in Arkansas. So I think you have maybe a combination of these, suggestive racial questions, and then also the Clinton factor, as Dr. Ford identified before. And I think that's fascinating. What else?
Well, let's follow up. Oh, I'm sorry.
I was going to take it back there. Yes.
Okay. I'm looking at the Life in Arkansas section and the financial questions.
Uh-huh.
Are you better or worse off compared to a year ago and next year? Obviously, your polling time is right as Wall Street started roller coastering. Do you think it's skewed at all given the timing of the polling compared to what Wall Street was doing?
Yes, the question is, do we think that what was happening on Wall Street impacted Arkansans' responses about whether they feel, better off financially, worse off financially, or about the same as last year. And then there's also one that projects. There's no question that had an impact because you see some depressed results here. You see a 10-point drop in the percentage of people who say they are better off this year than they were last year. You see an increase, a 20-point increase in the people who say that they are worse off. Now that's a hard thing to measure. We know this, but it's about in terms of real terms, what people's perceptions certainly are. The national economy is doing badly. I'm doing badly, and we see that reported in the results here. Something that we talked about earlier as a group that we thought was interesting, however, is that Arkansans, at least so far, remain optimistic. If you look at the next question down, you see that there's not a lot of movement in terms of what percentage of people presume that things will be better next year, about the same, or worse. So at least for now, Arkansans seem to think that this is a temporary thing, or it's not going to impact them personally into the next year. Anything else? Doug, you want me to come back to you? Where did it go?
Yeah, everybody else.
I think so.
You mentioned the Hillary factor being another factor. Is it just obviously Senator Clinton has done whatever she can, you know, to say. I mean, she's come back here on his behalf. Can she just not? Is she just having trouble convincing her voters they need to see new people, or what?
That's interesting. Yeah, Doug Thompson asks, you know, is Hillary? She's doing her work. She's trying to get people to vote for Obama. She's been back here. Is she having trouble convincing voters they should see other people? That's well posed. I think, you know, I think she is having a difficult time, but it's hard to sort of convincing her voters, convincing those hardcore supporters that, you know, Obama is going to bring them the policies or similar policies that she might have brought to them, that they should show him the same enthusiasm. But, you know, remember, we have, what is it, 15 or 17%, you know, undecided, which is, you know, twice as high as the national average. A lot of those, a disproportionate number of those, are Democrats. So it may just be that they're holding out, licking their wounds, and in the end they vote for Obama. Or it could be that they're holding out and, you know, they want to stay in that Democratic home, but in the end, you know, they don't. That's a difficult thing to predict. You know, she has done a lot. You know, she's made the statements. She's been back here. I just saw a news release yesterday that I think Bill Clinton, right, is going to be here tomorrow doing some stump stuff for the Democratic candidates, for Obama in particular. So they're doing a lot, but we still see this disconnect. We still see Democrats in particular not gravitating to the degree you would expect to the Democratic nominee.
We don't know what percentage of those Democrats are women.
We do know what percentage of those Democrats are women, but we have it in the analysis. We can look for that and try to figure, look for women, look for age, look for that 55-year-old white woman who just won't let go. I think that's a really great idea. Did you look at those? Yeah, we can definitely do that, and we'll get back to you. Note to self. Any other questions? Yes, sir.
Especially locally, Northwest Arkansas, immigration's been kind of a hot-button issue, but we don't see immigration called the most important problem by a very large percentage. That's a statewide number. Do you have a breakdown on the Northwest Arkansas or a third district on that? Is it more of an issue to people here in Northwest Arkansas?
Yes, the question is about, you know, Arkansas, like many other southern states, you know, though certainly not to the magnitude of western states, has been experiencing, you know, a surge of new arrivals, this new experience with immigration in Arkansas. And so he's wondering if there's a regional quality to that, because certainly we all experience, there seems to be talk more about it in Northwest Arkansas. We did break that down. It's in the congressional district breakdown on your summary report there on page 7. And we just, you know, we couldn't do all the questions by congressional district breakdown. There's just not room for it, much less, you know, the crosstabs by women, men, age, that kind of thing. It can be done. We just can't present it all efficiently. I think, there we go. It's that first one, right? What is the most important problem or issue facing people in Arkansas today? And you can see that immigration is noticeably higher. Now it's, you know, still only 13% of the total, with, you know, the economy kind of sucking all the air out of the room for all 4 congressional districts. But it's noticeably higher in Northwest Arkansas at 13% in the 3rd congressional district versus 6, 6, and 5, you know, in the others, sort of barely registering still in the others. Any other questions?
As long as we're going along here. On the initiated Act 1, where it says, and the question you ask in the poll is perfectly accurate. It does say cohabitating outside of a valid marriage marriage from adopting or fostering a child. I'm going to ask a question you may not know.
Okay.
As I understand it, the proponents of this initiated act had to phrase it that way, cohabitating parents, in order to not have a legal challenge. Is there any way of telling, or do you have any thoughts on the fact that it wasn't specific to gay couples?
Yes.
Having an impact here.
Yeah. Doug Thompson's question again is about Initiated Act 1, and that the proponents of this measure, after failing to adopt something along those lines in the 2007, after failing to convince the legislature in the 2007 legislative session to adopt a ban on fostering and adoption, by cohabitating adults, and before that by gays and lesbians, in particular gay and lesbian couples. There has been some movement in the Arkansas court system, and then of course in the court system nationally, and they were sort of watching this happen, that you can't target a group of people in that way, that, or at least it will be judicially suspect, right, if you do that sort of thing. So this has been widely considered in Arkansas the reason that this particular measure was crafted to say, cohabitating unmarried adults. And so we tried to ask the question in that way. Now, certainly anyone who's been reading the newspaper, in the last 18 months or so knows that much of the target seems to pertain to gay and lesbian couples, gay and lesbian relationships, and, having children in those homes, adopted or foster. But they broadened it out, and the proponents have been making the argument, that you need a man and a woman in a stable marriage to provide a satisfactory home. So this is the argument that's been made. I do think that they may have overplayed their hand, Doug. That by broadening it out in order to avoid legal challenge, or in order to reduce the possibility of legal challenge, that it became too blanket of a ban for many Arkansans who know that there are kids in Arkansas and kids around the world that need homes, that almost anything would be a better situation than the one that they are in. So this appears to me, that it may have been an overplayed hand. I should add here too, and you and I have had this discussion before, Brenda Blegg and I have had this discussion before, we've been asking questions on the Arkansas poll now for 3 or 4 years about gays and lesbians and about these various, policy prohibitions and that sort of thing. And we've had trouble in the past in talking with people on the phone about, do you favor or oppose a measure that would prevent something to which you are opposed? Right? It becomes very difficult to understand these things over the phone. And so we've been tinkering with language and doing this and that. And so I thought at first when I saw these results, I needed to be cautious about that. We talked with the Survey Research Center. We spoke with the interviewers. These are many of the same interviewers who've administered the Arkansas poll for the last 2 or 3 years. And they said, no, there's no pause. There's no misunderstanding. People understand what we are asking. So we don't think that there's, a double negative or a triple negative. We don't think there's confusion about it. We think that people are rejecting such a sweeping blanket prohibition on, suitable outlets for children in need of placement. That appears to be what's happening. I think that may come as something of a surprise to the rest of the country, that has us perhaps targeted and put in a particular box.
Do you believe that if we're not for the legal difficulties of putting such an amendment on, a petition on the ballot, that if there was a petition that said that we're to ban gay and lesbian couples directly, do you think do you think the results would be much different?
So the question is, if they had, either ignored, or there hadn't been sort of these judicial signals that they, that they shouldn't or they couldn't write the measure to target, gay and lesbian couples in particular, do I think if they'd composed it that way, would the results have been different? I actually think that would have been a little different, but not a lot different. I think this issue is losing saliency. We've been noticing that for the last couple of years with many voters. But in addition to that, we've actually tested that question in the past, John, asking about gay and lesbian couples, asking about fostering, asking about adoption. And almost always the results have come out when we get to a place where we like the form of the question and it doesn't seem confusing to people. It comes out that people support those bans, but not enthusiastic. It's often in the low 50s that Arkansans will say, yes, I support this, or no, I don't. In fact, last year I think it's ended up being something like 47-45. There was no clear majority. A few of the answers have been within the margin of error. So I think that's an excellent question. Is it because we're not targeting this particular group of people this time? But I think that even that may have received more mixed reviews than some people would have anticipated this year. At least our past data would suggest that. Any other questions?
I've got some more questions, but I'm going to have to see the detailed
Right.
results and the breakdown on that one question raised.
Mm-hmm.
And so if y'all will be available after I've had a chance to look at that.
Absolutely. If anyone, I mean, that's the beauty of 1,600 people is not only does it give you, a margin of error of 2.5 percentage points statewide, which is really exciting, and not only does it give these congressional district breakdowns, which we've provided to many in the media before in the past, but we've always felt a little dirty about because the margin of error, with 200 people per congressional district is something like 7 or 8 percentage points, so you feel a little uncomfortable doing that. So we can do all of that, but we can just slice it in so many ways, for a social scientist, right, this is the kind of thing that makes us giddy. So we'd be happy to deliver the data any way you want it.
One more question?
Yeah, sure.
Getting back to the national race, using the Arkansas results, what can you tell about what trends in other states, other southern states, other Midwestern states? Is there a relevance there? Can you talk a little bit more about that?
Yeah, I'll make a few comments, and then I'll turn it over to Dr. Ford. The question is, given the Arkansas poll results and what we see in terms of our, Obama-McCain breakdown, that kind of thing, what relevance is there maybe to some of the Midwestern swing states, the other southern states, that kind of thing? On the one hand, I think there's relevance in terms of Dr. Pearl's connection of, people's racial attitudes, people's political knowledge, assumptions about Senator Obama, that kind of thing. And I think that can have I think it should resonate in a lot of other states, some that are considered more swing, for example, than Arkansas is. But I will also say that in some ways Arkansas is unique in the sense that this is where Hillary Clinton received her strongest support. And so you have not only a race factor, potentially just some sort of other cultural disconnect factor, you also just have, we believe, kind of a disgruntled group of people who are not going to Obama, are not yet going to Obama, although their proclivities might be in that direction because of their strong support for Clinton. Now, but that's not just an Arkansas thing, right? It's something we've been discussing, nationally in other states as well. So I think there's some application there. Let me turn it over to Dr. Ford and see if she wants to add more to that.
I agree completely with Dr. Perry. I just want to add one more thing. I think what we see is unique with Arkansas in comparison to other red states or swing states is the lack of the Obama campaign here. If we look at what has happened in other states, as far as the ground organization, the volunteers, the grassroots network, that has been paramount in the Obama campaign, making inroads in areas that they felt initially they would not be able to take hold of. So I think they missed the opportunity by not having a presence here. Like I said, they did not open an office here in the state until last month. Obama has never visited the state. So I think those factors also play a very important role in why we see Democrats, independents being a little hesitant as far as going towards Obama.
Okay, well, if there are no more general questions, I just wanted to close by, again, urging anyone who's interested to view the entire survey protocol. We do post all of our questions. We don't consider it, sort of copyrighted information. We tell you what questions we ask, in what order, what the response options were. You'll see, if maybe some of you have looked at this before, that we rotated the response options, right, to try to get rid of order effects, right, of people just picking the first one or the last one. We have all that stuff is out there and available on our website. You can see the full summary report. You can see the news release certainly on the Arkansas poll website. You can also see all of these same materials for each of the past 9 years. And so there are some interesting comparisons that we're not always able to present in the summary report and keep it under 10 pages. Also remind you again that both Pearl and I are available to run specialized analyses. We have some requests already to whatever interests people the most, and our contact information is on the news release. I just wanted to briefly thank Barbara Jaquish and others at University Relations for working so hard to set up this event. Thank you all for coming, and I want to thank the 1,600 Arkansans for sharing their thoughts on politics and policy. Thank you so much.